Welcome to the C2C CFB UD SHOW, where ARMY is facing off against NAVY. I could do that because no one's listening and this is live.
Yep.
Yep, here we go. This beautiful Thursday afternoon, we are going to sit here and talk through some different underdog props, pick'ems, and what we're liking, what we're thinking about in the next week. There's only 2 games up, Ethan, but I figure we can talk about a few more games as we anticipate their drop.
Yeah, definitely. I'm shocked that we have bowl games already. Feels like it's earlier than ever, and maybe that's the 12-team playoff pushing things back a little bit, but it's provided us a nice 2-game slate, which is nice.
I will say there's not really anything nice about this 2-game slate. As I wrote up the article for the DraftKings main slate, and man, this is like it's a tough one. This is a tough one. But let's talk about it. I mean, Army Navy is about as cool of a game as it can get. This is a fun one every year. I'm curious to see. I'll start us off on this Army Navy game.
Yeah.
I think obviously you talk Army Navy, you talk option quarterbacks, and Bryson Daly, Captain America, is at the top, right? So I have a feeling that Bryson Daly could just go absolute ham. Like, he is 6 rushing touchdowns away from the career record, which you say, wow, 6 is like a lot. Why are you bringing that up? I don't know. That doesn't feel like the craziest thing. I mean, he's got 2 touchdowns in like every game but 1 on the ground.
Yeah.
And then he faces off against a Marshall team where they're huge favorites. Like, they're not going to stop him. So all that to say is I like the over 1.5 rushing plus receiving touchdowns.
Yeah.
Thank God for that plus receiving.
Right.
And it's juiced at 107x. So
yeah, that seems pretty good. I have been thinking about it, and these are probably the 2 best offenses that have played in an Army Navy game in like the last 25-30 years. Would you agree with that?
Probably. I don't know. I think if Blake Horvath is hurt, then that could raise some issues.
That's fair.
But I think largely, yeah. I mean, this is definitely the most well-rounded Army offense, and probably the most well-rounded Navy offense that they've had in many years.
No, that makes total sense. Going with that though, and assuming the health for Horvath, I think that my favorite option in this game is going to be Eli Heidenreich and his receiving yard over of 39.5. It feels like a game where Navy's probably going to be behind the 8 ball. We know that they've been able to move the ball better this year than last year. And Heidenreich, he gets dual usage with the rushing usage and the receiving usage. I just really think that they're going to have to throw to keep up in this game. And so I like him as kind of the primary receiving option to go over 40.
Yeah, this does feel like a situation where they're going to need to pass a little bit. The concern would be obviously Army, they just drain the clock, and like, does Navy really feel like they have to throw the ball a lot when they're down by
2 touchdowns?
Just 2 touchdowns. But I think ultimately they will be throwing it, and that number is fairly low. Like, that's not a large number. So I think it over there makes sense.
It's also interesting because, these 2 teams both being pretty standard traditional triple option teams. They don't have that advantage that they have, week in and week out going against a team that doesn't see this in practice. So there's, I think that just adds to the gamesmanship a little bit that Navy may pass a little bit more than usual, even though they do pass, I'd say, more than a traditional triple option team this year.
Yeah, I think things have changed for both of them. I think they're going to end up, both teams are going to pass a little bit. I feel like if anyone's not going to pass, it's Army. Because Army is likely to be in the lead and control the football game. And where do you go from there? Like, if you didn't want to do the touchdown over there or the higher there, I would think this 199.5 number is pretty big for me for combined pass and rush yards. The Army is really tough to figure out. They're really good in terms of like live betting, like the second half type stuff, because like last week with Tulane, they were controlling the football. They were not throwing the football in the second half. Like
Right.
they were all over the ground. There was no reason to throw the football. They don't want to throw the football,
Right.
if they don't have to. And they were just controlling the ground so much they didn't throw. And subsequently, even with Daly having like 28 carries, he ended up with 143 total yards. So this UTSA game where he goes for 340 combined yards almost, like that's atypical.
Yeah.
Even like this 139 on the ground and 26 yards against Notre Dame through the air, like that doesn't even hit that 199 and a half number.
Yeah.
And also, if he hits 199 and a half, that means this offense is moving, which means that he's gonna score twice on the ground. Like,
yeah.
So I don't think those numbers jive together. So I like the under or the lower there as well. If Horvath is healthy, or maybe is enough of Horvath being banged up, is that like going to lead you to any of his props?
I don't think so. I mean, I feel like 98.5 is a little bit like, even if we do think that they're going to be in a position where they have to throw the ball more, like throwing the ball more doesn't necessitate that they're going to be successful in doing so. And so I think that 98.5 is a little too on the nose for me to really want to do anything there. The 165.5 is probably the number that I like the most out of his, and taking the lower on it. If he is banged up and, we don't see the usage that we're used to, I think that's a very healthy number to hit lower on.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like, if that's one of those situations where the numbers both feel kind of tight, but when you combine them, you get a little bit of a boost. Or I guess you do, right? That's 158 is what it's if you combine them, so you get about a 7-yard advantage there. And one thing I will say is I would never bet higher on Horvath considering the situation, so I would avoid that there. I guess the only other play that's like semi-relevant is Kanye Udo. Any Kanye Udo thoughts?
Not really. I felt like he got pretty crazy usage last week in that.
He did, yeah.
Athletic Conference championship game. Looking now, 20 attempts, 158 yards and a touchdown. I don't anticipate him going as like buck wild as he did last week. So maybe a lower on his 69.5, but probably gonna avoid it.
Yeah, I think if you needed something to like round out the game, like if you didn't want to do the bowl game, like I think you could go lower on Udo. The one thing is, right, like I'm not concerned about Navy understanding how to stop the offense. Like I think they probably will. We've seen it in the past where these games get like super ugly. So I do think a lower on Udo makes sense if you want to round it out. Obviously not my more favorite play. This South Alabama Western Michigan game.
Hell yeah.
What to even say about it? Western Michigan is a bottom 15 pass defense.
Yeah.
So I do think some of these pass numbers are a little low, like specifically Jeremiah Webb. He's kind of teetered between like receiver 2, receiver 3. I think that 34.5 is fairly low. You do need a little bit of a bigger play, but he gets so many bigger play type targets that I like higher there. And then the question too is like Jamal Pritchett, there's rumors or just people just creating these theories that like maybe he hits the portal or something.
Yeah.
I don't see it. So like if he did hit the portal, like you're getting an incredible number on Webb.
Yeah.
So I would probably avoid Pritchett, period, just because I think that number is pretty firm. That's a pretty big number again. But do we want
to talk elephant in the room about transfer portal and how South Alabama is addressing it?
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and start us off with it?
So our good friends on the C2C Slack and particularly over at the G5 Hive, Justice was able to give us some info on South Alabama, and the sounds coming out of the program are that Fluff Bothwell being the biggest name in the portal from them, and the one that we care about the most when looking at these pick'ems. But the mentality there is that if these players who are in the portal want to play in the bowl game, they will be allowed. Major Applewhite has, made it clear that if they want to play, they're able to play. That being said, neither Bothwell or Scruggs, the cornerback who is also in the portal for South Alabama, neither of them are on the depth chart in the game notes. So it does sound like, my assumption there is that Bullock will be the starting running back for South Alabama. He's the only one who has numbers posted here on Underdog. So I'm assuming he's going to be out. I do think it's interesting, though, with that mentality and with that the bowl game being so early in the transfer portal season. Like, if you are planning on going into the portal, you could wait until after this game is over to announce it and say anything, and you would be just fine. And so, to me, if they're not already announced, I think that they're probably going to play. They may announce after the bowl game's over because it's such an early bowl game. But I don't think it's going to come into play for anybody who's not yet announced that they're transferring.
I will say I don't think Fluff plays.
No.
Even if it was on the depth chart, then maybe, but like not on the depth chart. And biggest reason why to me is like this game is in Montgomery, Alabama. Like, like if this was in Hawaii, Fluff was going to act like he was playing. You know what I'm saying? Like this game is in, the Bahamas.
Yeah.
Fluff is there. But for Montgomery, like down the street, up the street, no way that he's playing that full game. So
and you have to kind of treat it too. Like, I mean, we don't give players crap really about declaring for the NFL and foregoing bowl games anymore. But like, it's a really similar situation for these guys who are transferring from these low G5 schools and hopefully looking to transfer up. Like, they're looking to get the bag. Like, this is their livelihood and their way that they're trying to provide and get the bag, because they may not have a chance to get the bag at the NFL. So like, you don't risk the injury that would then decrease your chances of getting the bag at a different school. So
to play Western Michigan in a bowl game,
right?
Yeah, you're just not doing that, and there's no one that's going to blame them for that, because you just don't. It's just doesn't make. You have Ole Miss and Auburn on your door. You're not playing in the bowl game in Montgomery.
Not at all.
Western Michigan is sloppy, man. I don't even know what to think with them. Largely, I would avoid the Western Michigan side. I don't see any routes to like good opportunities. Like Jaden Nixon was banged up and then didn't necessarily perform. Zahir Abdus-Salam came in and got some good usage. Buckley is still there as an option. There's no reason, I think, to play around with this. Kenneth Walker, Womack, played last game and he got 0 targets. Yeah. So I just don't think. Just avoid this.
Yeah, I mean, the passing game,
a reception number. If we get a reception number on Womack, I might be willing to.
That's fair. I do think the play here is going and targeting the running game for South Alabama on hires there. Western Michigan is missing their starting edge rusher, Corey Walker, as well as their interior defensive tackle, Ontario Thompson, as well. Both of those guys going to the portal. We don't know what Western Michigan's stance is on if these guys are going to be allowed to play. Tight end Blake Bosma also is going to be in the portal. So that's an interesting spot, seeing that we're going to get some depth guys in for the defensive line, most likely. I think it's a great spot to try and capitalize on. Bullock, who stuck with the program. I believe this is his last game with the program. I think he's graduating and out of the program now. So it's going to be, I think, a nice little send-off for him where they try and, feed him as much as they can.
Agreed, by the way. I think South Alabama is the side to target there. What do you think about like this Memphis game on Tuesday? They play West Virginia. There's nothing else is out, by the way. There's no props released for any other bowl games. Memphis plays West Virginia in the Scooters Coffee Frisco Bowl. Interesting developments here with Rich Rod being hired as the head coach for West Virginia. We might see some shakeup with the roster. Like, do certain guys stay? Do they feel like they're fits for the offense? So I think if you're like just betting this, by the way, I think Memphis is the side. I think Memphis, with a bunch of older guys, wants to show out one more time type of thing, especially like Seth Hennigan. But I also think we might get some surprise inactives for West Virginia. So, I mean, what's kind of your take on the bowl game?
Yeah, it does feel like a spot where Memphis is probably going to be the hungrier team, the team that is kind of more – I want to say more has more to play for. That said, I mean, this is still a step down for Memphis and a letdown for the season overall. West Virginia does have a little bit of like juice coming in here because, the hire of Rich Rod, like you've got a new coach. You want to, if you're sticking with that West Virginia program, you want to show out and prove that you are somebody who can help that new regime and play well. But I really do think Memphis is going to have the upper hand offensively and be able to have their way. Josiah Trotter, starting linebacker for West Virginia, is in the portal, assuming he's going to be out. Seems like a good opportunity for Memphis to take advantage with, Mario Anderson and some of their, tight ends. You got Lance Fear, guys who have kind of eaten off and on throughout the year. But yeah, I think this is a big send-off for a lot of Memphis guys. It is interesting. I'm keeping my eye on the portal because I was anticipating seeing some Memphis guys in there just because, it seems like a strong G5 program that graduates a lot of guys into P4 ranks. But, nothing so far. So,
well, a lot of those guys are old, right? Like how old is like Rock Taylor and Demir Blankumsey? Do they have years left?
Blankumsey might, but Rock Taylor is definitely out of here.
Rock Taylor's out. Yeah, I think Demir might be done.
It wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, Demir's done, I think. So, like, yeah, I think what's really interesting here is the shake. What is the shakeup of West Virginia with Rich Rod?
Yeah,
Nate said something to the effect of he thinks that there's a possibility that Jaheim White might not play, like he might enter the portal.
Interesting.
If that's the case, I would be on the lookout for CJ Donaldson lines. I think that's the first thing I would do is pay attention to when these are dropped and these lines are dropped by Underdog and say, okay, like I'm waiting on that news for Jaheim White potentially or CJ Donaldson or both, right? Like what does that do for the offense? Even like the passing game too, right? Like does Cole Taylor have another year of eligibility? Like
no, he's graduated.
I was going to say, like, a Cole Taylor type would be perfect to hit the portal because he's not going to do anything in a Rich Rod offense. So he's done, you said. So no need to worry about it. But I would be very quick to pull the trigger on a Donaldson line if it drops too low and we hear some White news.
Yeah, I think that's a good call out.
What do you think about UNLV playing Cal? Kind of a similar situation as Memphis.
Yeah.
Kind of a letdown. They ended up not winning against Boise and State because of that, they're not in the playoff. Instead, they're in this LA, so they don't have to go to the cold. That's nice for Hajj Malik Williams. But like, do you suspect like Hajj Malik Williams is going to be like fired up? Do you think that like Ricky White plays? I'm like, if I'm Ricky White, like I don't know, I might not play this game.
I think the answer is yes and no to that. Yes, I do think Hajj Malik Williams is going to be pumped up. It's his first chance to play in a bowl game. Like he's going to be excited to play in a bowl game. Coming from Campbell, like this is a cool way to end his season, and I think he'll be excited to play it. I don't think Ricky White's going to play. To me, he's signed, sealed, delivered to the NFL. Like you're not risking anything in this game. So that said, guys like DeJesus, I believe there's another guy that gets some good usage. Not Belunga, he's the tight end, but there's
Casey Kane.
Yeah.
And who got some random usage was Bradley.
Yes, Bradley. He got usage last week. I think we could see some action there. Cal, assuming they're probably going to be without Fernando Mendoza. I don't know.
I would imagine he's not playing that game. I haven't heard anything official.
Him and Isaiah Hunter, both guys who have jumped to the portal. So that's kind of interesting. Is Ott has another year left, right?
I believe so, yeah.
And after the year he had, he's coming back. Yeah,
he needs another year.
Yeah.
The question is it at Cal or not?
Exactly.
But, he needs another year.
I don't have a huge lean. Probably going to be looking at what that Cal passing number is and looking for a lower. If it comes out a little too high, a little audacious is Finley the backup for Cal? Ben Finley? That might have been last year's guy.
Wasn't Chandler Rogers the backup?
That's who it is. Okay, I knew they brought a new transfer in. Okay,
I feel like Rogers. I thought I saw Rogers enter the portal, but I don't think it actually happened.
interesting.
This was like in my head. I think I just created it up in there. Speaking of quarterback portals, Western Kentucky.
Yeah,
who was playing quarterback for Western Kentucky in this bowl game?
Not Weltkamp, not TJ Finley. Well, wait. I say that Western Kentucky is the team that notoriously, like 2 years ago, played all of their players who were in the portal. I bet Weltkamp plays.
I think the thing to remember here is just to follow. I think the point to remember here is to follow it.
Well, yeah,
because they could play. They could not. I wouldn't just. I think you're right. I don't think we can just assume that because someone like Messer and Weltkamp are in the portal that they're just not going to play.
And like if I had to choose today, I would say that he'd probably play. I'd say that they want him to play.
One thing I wanted to note with the Fernando Mendoza comment you made. Sometimes these books will, especially, I won't say especially, Underdog's one of them, just the other ones are the same. Like they'll just copy paste a passing number.
Yeah.
You know, like if Fernando Mendoza was going to be 245.5, Chandler Rogers is 245.5. You know, like, so just keep an eye on that. You know, obviously the gap from Mendoza to Rogers isn't the worst, right?
Right.
But like some of these ones, like Marshall playing Army, if they do anything close to like a Braylon Braxton 190 line, you know, like Braylon Braxton would have been like 190 or 185 or something. But now we're on the 4-stringer. If that number is anywhere near 185.5 or something like that, I think that's a copy pasted number. That's a lower that you should target.
That makes a lot of sense. I agree there. Do we want to talk New Orleans Bowl too? I don't know if next week we'll get a chance to talk that one.
I mean, what is there to talk about with Sam Houston State? I don't think they have 4 running backs in the portal. Do I have that correct?
I believe so. I know Ducker's in there and Evans is in there, I believe.
Yeah, Simeon Evans, the receivers in there, Jay Ducker, DJ McKinney, John Gentry, and Zach Herbachek. All 4 of those guys are in the portal, or all 5 of them, 4 of them being running backs. And then you have Hunter Watson, who's he's kind of like a runner, decent passer. Like, I don't know what they do in this game offensively.
To throw the ball
to Noah Smith and Ife Adeyemi and Quavez Humphreys. Like, I mean, these guys aren't like that impressive of a group. But I guess
Quavez Humphreys is like my boy back in week 2, man. Like
that was a moment.
Absolutely, sure. Yeah. No, I think it's I'm definitely looking Georgia Southern. They seem to rise up in bowl game situations the past few years. Like, I think they'll be fired up to play. Sam Houston. This is Sam Houston's first bowl game since making the jump. Were they in one last year?
I think they played in a bowl game last year because they were pretty good last year.
Wasn't there like the ban was from, like they weren't allowed to play in the conference championship game?
They did not play in a bowl game last year. Well, they only won 3 games. Yeah, they weren't very good last year.
Okay.
Yeah. This is their first ever bowl game.
So, that's a narrative that I always like to consider and check out too. But I think technically we'll be able to talk about that next week since we'll jump on here next Thursday.
Yeah, for sure. I think I talked about this on the unabated show I did this week that just came out last night. Like, that's a really good point about Sam Houston State being their first bowl game. Like, you need to be targeting teams that care, aka motivation. You need to be worrying about weather. Right, I'm concerned about SMU going to Penn State, like, and what that'll impact them, and then coaching changes, which we've talked about with which we will talk about with Rich Rod and Jacksonville State and like West Virginia, the impact there. So yeah. Any final thoughts or ideas, topics before we wrap up?
I'm kind of just. It seems a little surreal that this time next week we're going to be talking about college football playoffs being, just around the corner and have a lot more interesting games to talk about next week.
They're all interesting, Ethan. Don't knock any of these games. Okay.
Coming from what was the line you said about the South Alabama Western Michigan game? You want nobody here?
Yeah.
There's nothing good about this game.
The DraftKings main slate is rough.
Yeah,
it's rough. Very cool. Well, hope everybody enjoys Army Navy. It's always a fun one. Kind of a standalone, which is always great to see. even with a bowl game at night, we still get the standalone. But yeah, hope everybody enjoy the show. Good luck this weekend, and we'll catch you guys next week.